You're about to watch a Trains Newswire video. If you enjoy what you see, consider watching some of our other full-length videos. Hotspots, Horseshoe Curve, Tehachapi, Chicago Racetrack, and more. Locomotive, the video companion to our best-selling special issue. And a special collection from documentary producer Rich Lassen. All these and more are available from our website, kalmbachhobbystore.com.
Good morning, Trains readers. This is Friday, June 15th. I'm Brian Schmidt.
And I'm David Lassen. We're filling in for the A team this week since Steve and Jim are both out of town.
So you get the BS and the DL team.
So, you know, I spend a lot of my work as the passenger editor, so there's several passenger items I think are worth discussing this week. The latest, which we just filed this morning, is the latest in Amtrak's war on private cars.
Is that going to be a new hashtag?
I think maybe it should be, yes. Trains 2 or something like that. I don't know. Anyway, there's a new rule proposal that would ban passengers on private cars from riding on the observation platform while an Amtrak train is in motion. In other words, only one of the coolest things there is about riding a private car would be done away with. Not final yet, being discussed, but it's in a set of proposed rules, 14 pages of proposed rules, which apparently includes how you're supposed to dress when you're on a private car, among other things. So
I can't imagine conductors going to come back too often to enforce that.
That was my thought, that the enforcement is going to be a challenge, but they are threatening that you could lose your right to be pulled by Amtrak if you break any of these rules. So we'll see what happens, but private car people have to be getting really tired.
I can imagine.
What have you got? What's first on your list this week?
We'll stick with passengers, but a happier note. There's a celebration at Grand Central Terminal marking the start of the preservation movement for it. You can find out the details on Newswire. It's later this summer, I think later this month even. But check that out.
Thank goodness that one was saved, because it's a spectacular building, and it saves New Yorkers from having to deal with two rat's nests like Penn Station.
And it, you know, I got to get the nod in there for the Central. I grew up as a Central kid, nothing for the Pennsy, so yeah.
Also on the passenger front, Amtrak continuing a lot going on regarding station agents. There's the Montana congressional delegation was told in response to their queries that, sorry, your station agents are gone and we're not bringing them back. The town of Marshall, Texas has launched a petition drive to save its station agent, who's supposed to be going away as of June 29th. Over 500 people signed petitions that were given to their legislators. And interesting, the guy heading that effort is named Anderson. Same name as the Amtrak CEO.
Anderson versus Anderson.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then finally, a West Virginia senator added a amendment to the Transportation Appropriation Bill, which will require Amtrak to keep one station agent, at least one station agent, in every state it serves. So
West Virginia has a history of kind of mandating things on Amtrak, from service to this spot and that spot. With Staggers, I think, was also from there as well. Yeah.
So anyhow, interesting to see that the station fights are not going away quietly.
Well, let's move to freight. Bill Stevens has 3 stories for us just in the last 2 days out of a investors conference in New York City, looking at crude oil traffic on CP, overall operations on UP, and intermodal profitability on CSX, if there ever was a doubt on that. But look for those. Bill's stories are always a highlight of our Newswire coverage. Yeah,
Bill's got some things coming up in the magazine, 2 pretty spectacular articles I think people are going to like, a CP feature and a Kansas City Southern feature. So.
And those are longer, I think, than we've run features in a while.
They are very in-depth.
Good. Our readers always love that.
You mentioned Union Pacific. Another thing, they're still dealing with a tunnel collapse in the Cascades in Oregon. Mm-hmm. The tunnel's been closed. It collapsed during a maintenance work. Collapsed on May 29th. Still closed. The earliest they're saying it's going to be open now is June 23rd. This also has a passenger component because that's the route of Amtrak's Coast Starlight. and Amtrak had been busing passengers around the closure. No more. Basically, the Starlight is only running north to Sacramento and south from Seattle to Eugene, Oregon. And between the two, you're on your own. They said it's not sustainable to be busing people overnight. But
I gotta wonder how many buses it takes for a trainload of people.
That's it. And it can't be fun going overnight on a bus, but it does seem like if you bought a ticket from one end to the other, they should be providing.
They should get you there, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, but another. Speaking of closures, Durango and Silverton still shut down because of fires in Colorado. They're now saying the earliest it could reopen is June 30th. Really feel bad for the people in Durango and especially Silverton, because that's got to be a huge hit to the local economy. And that's such a spectacular ride. I hope they can get the fire out and get things back running soon.
Now, there's a similar story in Pikes Peak right now, where Manitou Springs is the town, and the city is working to get the Pikes Peak Cog Railway back in service, hopefully in the next year or two. It had been shut down and not planning to operate at all this year, they said, due to track conditions and overall maintenance issues.
Yeah, they're looking for some tax breaks to cover the expense of significant rebuilding of the route. Manitou Springs, another town which, yeah, as you say, probably taking a big tourist hit with that railroad closed, is definitely supporting that effort. So we hope that happens. We had to drop that. That was scheduled for our trains tour this fall. We're still figuring out an alternate plan for that part of the trip, but we hope that that the Pikes Peak will be back in operation soon. It is a pretty spectacular trip if you've never done it.
Did you get to do it when you were living in Denver?
I never did it when I lived in Denver. I did do it the one time I was on the trains tour. Pretty neat going up. Unfortunately, the top was fogged in, so didn't get really to appreciate the view, which I hear is amazing. Maybe next time, some other time.
Well, we'll stick out with preservation. We have some sad news out of Minnesota. Frank Sandberg, who's instrumental with the Minnesota Transportation Museum and Milwaukee Road 261, has passed away this week. Steve Glashinsky is a longtime friend of the family. He did an obit for us this week. It's up on Newswire. It's open for anyone to go see. We encourage you to check that out and just see what Frank's legacy was, because railroad preservation is just an incredible legacy to have.
Clearly a big loss for the preservation movement.
Absolutely.
So, the last thing I would mention this week is, as a Southern Californian, LA Metro unveiled the initial proposals for its possible routes between the San Fernando Valley and LA's west side. They're looking at possibly light rail, possible heavy rail, possible monorail between the two. One would actually basically go maybe up the center divider of the 405 freeway over Sepulveda Pass. One would tunnel under it. There's a lot of different options, much needed. Not coming anytime soon. Right now, the scheduled start date or service date is 2033, but there's a move to try to get it up to advance that to 2028 in time for the Olympics. But that's a huge bottleneck if you ever spend any time there. Living on the 405, as many people do, an alternative route there would be really welcome. So it'd be interesting to follow that and see just which of the multiple options they end up settling on.
Well, excellent. Do you have anything else?
That will do it for me this week.
That clears me out too. All right. Well, have a safe weekend, everyone. Enjoy your time out on the rails.
Take care.